You ever see something that just makes you itch? Like your skin doesn't even start crawling, it just straight up starts itching. That's how I feel whenever I think about the murder of Tristyn Bailey. She was a cheerleader at Patriot Oakes Academy in St. Johns County, Florida. She was in the 7th grade. She had her whole life ahead of her, and this twisted child, who is barely older than she was, took it from her. Just because he felt like it. Unfortunately, as is so often the case with situations like this, there are a lot of people out there who don't really care about what happened to Tristyn Bailey. They're far more interested in the guy that allegedly took her life. They're way more interested in pleading his innocence and acting like he didn't do anything wrong because they think he's cute. This is more important to them than remembering that a girl is dead. Regardless of whether you believe he did it or not, a girl still lost her life way too soon. Now, I want to make it very clear right now from the jump that I will not be using his name in this video. He's being accused of stealing the life of a young girl and ruining the lives of an entire community in the process for no good reason. So, by not using his name, I am trying in some small way to take away some of the power that he was so desperate for and to minimize his importance. Before we go any further, can you please make sure that you've subscribed to the channel and hit the notification bell? That way, you won't miss any of our other videos. Okay, so let's just take a step back for a minute so I can provide you with a little bit more detail on exactly what happened to Tristyn. Obviously, what happened to her was a tragedy and it should never have been allowed to happen in the first place. I shouldn't be telling you guys about how she died, but I feel like it's important for you, all of you to know because I want to drive home just how much of a monster this kid really is. Tristyn was first reported missing on the morning of May 9th, 2021. She was last seen walking around her neighborhood in the early hours of the morning with a teenage boy who appeared to be around her age. The last known sighting of her was from a security camera at 1:45 a.m. Later that morning, police sent out a search team to look for her, and unfortunately, by that afternoon, her body had been found. She had been dumped near a retention pond on the outskirts of her neighborhood. And when she was found, she had been stabbed 114 times. 49 of those stab wounds were defensive in nature, from where she had tried to protect herself during the initial attack. You don't stab someone that many times without there being a whole ton of intent behind it. It took investigators less than 24 hours to identify their primary suspect. A combination of surveillance footage and interrogations immediately led them to an 8th grader living in the same neighborhood as Tristyn. They even went to the same school. They knew each other by name. There was enough substantial evidence for police to arrest him on 2nd-degree murder charges. Do you want to know what this sick kid did while sitting in the back of the police car? He posted about it on Snapchat using the caption, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristyn lately?" I don't even know where to begin with that, to be honest. I'm kind of speechless. Even if he didn't do it, the audacity of this kid to mock Tristyn's death is so absolutely gross to me. He could be innocent of all charges, which I don't believe for a single second, by the way, and that would still be enough to make me hate him. In case you were having any doubts about whether this kid is guilty or not, according to the official report, quote, "The defendant's story changed several times, but he ultimately made several admissions," end quote. And on top of all that, he supposedly told some of his classmates that he was planning on leading someone into the woods one day and stabbing them to death. So is there really any room for doubt here? With all of that in mind, how can someone possibly fantasize about this kid and want to date him? How can they seriously believe that he's done nothing wrong? How can they think it's okay to even joke about him being handsome? Well, there are some people out there who do. Not to get too far ahead of myself just yet, but he's going to be tried as an adult for his crimes, which means that he's looking at the possibility of life in prison. And if he's convicted, he'll be sent to an actual prison instead of a juvenile detention facility. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel like most normal people think that this is probably a good thing, right? But that's not how everybody feels about it. Their reasoning? He's just a kid. You've probably heard that excuse 1,000 times before at this point. He didn't know any better. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't understand the seriousness of his actions. It's the same kind of excuse that teenage boys are let off with time and time again. Even when they hurt people. Even when they kill people, apparently. Sadly, it doesn't stop with the people who say that this kid should be left alone and shouldn't face consequences for what he did. Since his arrest, there have been a worrying amount of accounts popping up on Instagram in support of him. And it would be one thing if these accounts were just being run by edgy teenage girls thinking he was cute, because that's not a new phenomenon by any means. Sure, we didn't have the same kind of technology in the 70s and 80s, but just look at the most prolific serial killers of the 20th century. Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, and John Wayne Gacy all had their own fair share of fangirls. What does it say about our society that most of these Instagram accounts are being run by his friends? Because they're not just random teenage girls who think they're being edgy for supporting him, they're his friends, which means that they knew Tristyn too. And their response to this situation has been to mock Tristyn's death by creating hashtags about setting the guy responsible free. Some of them have even taken pictures of knives and implied that they were involved with her murder too. One person even directly ties himself to what's happened, saying, "We told her to drop her drawers. She didn't listen, so we did what we had to do." There's been a lot of trolling. They've created a lot of really gross memes about her and said a lot of really hurtful stuff about how Tristyn deserved to die. Saying things like, "I bet you can't give me one reason why Tristyn deserves to live," before going on to insinuate they were planning on doing it again. It's funny how some of y'all actually think it's a game. Wait until someone else on the news to see it isn't a joke. Whenever they're called out for the things that they've said about Tristyn, they just laugh it off and act like it's one big joke. They don't seem to understand the severity of what's happened. And if they do understand it, then clearly they don't care. They just seem to be out to hurt as many people as they possibly can. Now, obviously, the police are taking this super seriously, and they're looking into the people making these claims to see if any of them are connected to what happened. Who knows? Maybe they'll end up facing legal consequences for what they've said. That might teach them something. And I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't say no to them being forced to realize that their actions have consequences. And speaking of the police, though, I said earlier that it didn't take them very long to find their primary suspect, and they were able to arrest him on second-degree murder charges. I know that the prosecution often aims for a lesser charge a lot of the time because it increases the chances of them getting an actual conviction. But it's absolutely insane to me that you could ever consider charging this guy with second-degree murder when he, again, stabbed Tristyn Bailey 114 times. What part of that doesn't scream premeditated to you? Anyway, there is some good news. A couple of weeks later, on May 27th, 2021, it was announced that the charges were going to be bumped up to first-degree murder instead, meaning that if he's convicted, this guy's looking at spending the rest of his life in prison, because as a minor, they can't give you the death penalty. And to top all of this madness off, the kid's mom was also arrested at the beginning of June. There aren't a whole lot of details about why she was arrested, but most reports seem to indicate that it was because she was caught trying to tamper with evidence. That's all I've got time for, so I just want to say one last thing. If there is one thing that you guys take away from this video, I hope it's this. Remember Tristyn Bailey. She's the one that deserves to be remembered, not the guy who stole her life for clout. What do you guys think? Do you think he'll be convicted? Do you think he'll get a full life sentence? What will happen if he doesn't? Let us know in the comments below.